Thanks for tuning in to the 6-3 podcast. I'm your host, Joel, and my co-host, Ben. And the Lions are 8-2, and Michigan Wolverines are undefeated, and they are now playing another undefeated team, the Ohio State Buckeyes, in the very bitter rivalry that is this. And I think it's becoming even more bitter with like the things that have kind of gone on in the last few weeks, where just these Ohio State fans have been more menacing than ever towards Michigan. Michigan is now finding flaws with like Ohio State and like what they've done that could be considered questionable against NCAA rules too. So it's like we all got something to fight about right now, and so this is going to be even a crazier game from that aspect because there's probably some pent up frustration building for this one. So, Ben, to you, what are going to be the keys in this game? What is your expected outlook on this game?
I don't really know. I can't really put my it's actually normally I'm like, all right, this is what should happen and but I just don't I don't know. Like Michigan's been really dominant, right? But they've also shown some warts in the last couple games, and it's not necessarily I think long term or like indicative of necessarily how that team has been all year too. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're a little banged up. McCarthy's banged up. The O line has certainly been banged up. Um, Roman Wilson went out of the last game. Sounds like he's fine, but um, you know, I I think it's probably going to take one of their best games, I would say, in order to win. But I feel pretty good about it with them being at home. I know they're like what 3.5 point favorites or something like that.
I think this is the first time they've been a favorite in how many
Right.
years?
That just worries me for whatever reason. I just don't know why. Like I don't like being the favorite against these guys. I'd rather not be. I don't love what Ohio State has, but I think they're just definitely a more all around solid team than they were last year. I think the star power is certainly not quite as good, but they've become a more balanced team this year. Ohio State has. They can run the ball a little more efficiency. Travion Henderson looks really good the last couple weeks. Um, the offensive line, while it's not great, I think they're getting a little better. And the defense is just a little more solid, a little more bend but don't break, and a little less like just boom or bust.
Mhm.
And that's what Michigan exploited the whole boom or bust thing last year with a bunch of big plays. And I'm just not sure those are there this year. So they're going to need a really efficient day out of JJ, which I think is certainly in there, but I worry because he's been banged up and he's just been a little bit off. So if you get the JJ that played against like Michigan State, now I know that Michigan State team's horrendous, but if you get that type of guy who's just on time, just basically a flamethrower. I mean, he was just insane that game. Um, or you get the JJ in pretty much every game up until last week, and then or the Bowling Green game. I think you got a pretty good chance. Even against Purdue, I thought he was pretty good, even though he wasn't like quite as efficient. I thought he was really good. Um, and against Penn State, obviously, he didn't have to do anything, so it doesn't really matter. Um, so if you get that JJ, I feel really good about it. If you get kind of something in between, I still think they can come up with a win. But if he's really erratic and off, I'd struggle to see them winning. I think he needs to play really well to beat Ohio State. Just because they don't have quite the efficient running game that they've had the last couple years, and um, even though the last couple weeks actually it has been a little more efficient, I would say. I mean, especially against Penn State, it's been a little more grindy. Um, but I don't know if they're going to be able to just line up straight up and just pound out 5 yards of carry. I just don't know if that's quite there. So we'll see. But if they get a really good JJ McCarthy, I think they could win. I think they could win by a couple scores if they do that at home. So
Yeah, I think, and I'm exactly. I think JJ is really the link here. Obviously, you need a healthy Roman Wilson because we saw the way they kind of fell apart in the receiving game, even against Maryland, when Roman went down right at the fourth snap of the game.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because not so long ago, JJ McCarthy was playing as well as any quarterback in the country,
yeah,
working his way towards a Heisman Trophy conversation. Now, talk has cooled off because I think he has a combined 200 yards passing against both Maryland and Penn State.
yep,
And yeah, we talked about banged up. It appears he might have like twisted his knee or his ankle in the end of that Penn State game.
yep,
And he said he said after Saturday's game, it was a little bit rough with Maryland. But that like he thinks he's going to feel better this week, which again he needs to. He threw barely over 50% completion percentage in the air, had a pick, no scrambles and no design QB runs against the Terps. And we talked about it even in week 8 because I mean Michigan's always been very cautious with him in like the early games where it just seems like it's like, okay, these aren't like games we're super concerned about. We can play JJ safe. But like you get to Penn State and you get to Ohio State and stuff like that, this gauntlet of a schedule that we've had, and you're going to need JJ to run the ball, use his legs, use his athleticism to kind of open up the field a little bit for everybody else. I think it'll make Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum a more effective running back when you can kind of open up the field a little bit. Obviously open up Cornelius Johnson, Colston Loveland, Roman Wilson. So in a lot of ways, that's my concern going into this game, even if it is a home game. I think JJ being healthy or actually like even 90% and willing to run and be effective running is going to be what's going to kind of change the outcome. Because I'm not going to necessarily blame Sharon Moore for having to be the head coach right now. That he's going to be the reason that they're losing this game. You know, obviously you expect more out of Harbaugh with the experience, but like Sharon Moore's doing fine. He's just been conservative. He's been safe. I think he's going to have to try to break it out. Hopefully, you know, having Jim Harbaugh during the week can at least kind of put those thoughts on his.
That is kind of an X factor because I feel like JJ and Harbaugh are really close. He seems to be, and I know we say the stats like JJ without Harbaugh is sucked, blah, blah, blah. It's also, I mean, I think it's small sample size and also like, you know, JJ was great against East Carolina without Harbaugh, great against UNLV without Harbaugh, right? Was not so great against Bowling Green without Harbaugh, right? But then, you know, he's been fine, right? It's not been great, but he's been fine. He's also played Penn State was the best defense we played by far, right? So of course he wasn't as good there. And you know, he just struggled a little bit against Maryland. So you know, we'll see, but I do think that's a little bit of an X factor, and it does concern me a little bit. I think they're going to be geared up and ready for this game. I think they've been game planning and preparing for it for the whole year. In all reality, it's a 1-game season, really, the way this schedule kind of set up. 2-game season maybe with Penn State. So, you know, I do think that's. Typically we've usually got a pretty good game plan against these guys. So I feel pretty good about it. I don't know. I just don't know how to feel about this game. It's one of those, the last couple of years in 2021, so that first year, I didn't feel great about it because I didn't know if we had enough offense to keep up.
We just haven't historically done anything until then. Yeah,
I just didn't know if we had quite enough offense to keep up, but I knew after like the first drive, it was going to be a game at the very least. Michigan ended up dominating really, but it would be a game because we were running the ball for chunks on them, right? And that we talked to Ballas actually before that game, I remember, and he felt pretty good about it. He thought they would be able to move the ball against them and hang right in there. And you know, I think one of my questions to him was, does Michigan have enough offense to score? I'm not worried about necessarily Michigan having enough firepower to score. I think these teams are very similar in all reality. When it comes to like offense, I am more worried about just some sort of catastrophic or dumb mistake or just not quite enough efficiency from Michigan, right? We have been a little bit less overall efficient offense, in my opinion, on the ground at the very least this year. And I don't know, maybe we get back to that. You know, we have a little bit in the last couple of weeks. So maybe we kind of get back to that and maybe Corum has 40 carries and goes out a legend. Maybe that happens, right? But you know, I do think they need to be super efficient in the air this game in order to win. And I just worry about the tackle situation, you know, giving up some pressures. Although Penn State's defensive ends are much better pass rushers than Ohio State's, but still.
I mean, he got JT Tuimoloau, but I mean,
he had a worse pass rush win rate than Taylor Upshaw last year.
Did he?
Upshot at 11% and JTT had 8%. But
I think he's still a handful on the edge. I mean, I think he's still a handful on the edge. But
I think he's great. He's a great power rusher because he's a big dude. You think he's gonna probably be a pretty good NFL player because he can
probably similar to Rashawn Gary, right?
Very similar. I could see him in a similar role. So I mean, I worry about it because he makes big plays, right? But I think our tackles will be okay if they're healthy, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ladarius Henderson needs to be does need
He's
to
got to
travel
be
with a team and dress. Like,
he's got to be healthy. It sounds like I don't know if Hinton's gonna play, probably not. So then it kind of limits the options of going super big tight big.
so Hinton also got hurt.
Hinton was hurt, yeah. So then they put Trente Jones in, which
Trente Jones is a liability, and
it's
Carson
a lie. But
Barnhart.
I mean, he's really good or really bad. That's his problem.
That's true.
So
Carson Barnhart's been consistently mediocre at
yeah,
best.
good against like average defensive ends.
Yeah,
I
I
would say he's
guess.
good. I would say he's good.
I
Like
don't think he even deserves to get drafted. I don't like what I see when
I
best
think
case
he's a
scenario.
better I think he's a better guard than tackle. I think he could play guard, certainly in the NFL.
Certainly don't need a guard. We have two of the best guards in the country.
No, we don't need a guard. So we'll see. I just think if the efficiency in the pass game is going to be the key, and then just not giving up big plays, and then the X factor for Ohio State is obviously Marvin Harrison. I don't know how you stop that guy. So
Another note that I saw was like Sharon Moore's almost admitted his concern with how to like approach officiating.
yeah,
He's been like very cautious on how to do it, and he's like, Harbaugh has earned the right to kind of say whatever he wants and however he wants to talk to them. And he's like, I'm still trying to just like figure out how to get used to working the officials during the game, and it's something you never have to do as an offensive coordinator, right? So I think that's an interesting way too. Is like, and who knows if officiating comes down to this game? We've certainly seen Ohio State games that come down to officiating.
we have.
Which is
Michigan hasn't had a bad whistle, really.
JT was short, right?
But Michigan hasn't really had a bad whistle since all this stuff has happened either. I'll be honest.
Officiating is actually been pretty solid, I think, for the most part.
It's been fine, right? I mean, there's plays where I'm like, that's not a penalty, or that was pass interference, or whatever it is, right? Or
you at least see it getting dished out to the opposing team if they do get a whack call, right?
Correct.
Like it's like they're consistently terrible.
So, correct. Just be consistent. That's always my thing. Is always just be consistent. So
it's the same with the strike zone. You want it for both teams.
If Michigan is able to play light in the box, so light in the tackle box with their defense, and still stop the run pretty efficiently, they're probably going to win. That's what I would say. If they,
I think they need to be light in the box because they need the DBs out for the.
That's what I'm saying. But Ohio State this year is much less prone to just getting in a position where they just throw the ball, right? They're not the CJ Stroud offenses of the last 2 years.
If this Ohio State team had CJ Stroud, we would lose this game.
Maybe.
I feel pretty good about saying that right now.
Well, if they have the CJ Stroud playing for the Texans right now, yeah, that dude's a stone cold killer. But
he's always been a good Ohio State quarterback too. McCord's not good. I don't think McCord's very good.
No, but the difference is we have to be able to present him with. We're gonna try to play light in the box. I can promise you that. We're gonna try to play with our nickel. We're gonna play four, probably six in the box with the four guys. The two stand-up defensive ends, two defensive tackles, two linebackers, and then that's probably what we're gonna maybe add a safety down late in certain situations. But we're probably gonna try to play with it too high, keep everything in front of us all game. Now the problem is Ohio State this year has been a lot better at just taking 5, 6, 7 yards on the ground and being better at blocking that up. Now, I don't think they've played defensive tackles like Michigan's, right? Or the depth across the line like Michigan's, right? But Ohio State has been much more. Last couple of years, what they would do is they'd run the ball on first down. They might get 2 or 3 yards, and then they'd be like, "Oh, we need to throw the ball. We have to throw the ball, right?" And Michigan is inviting them to throw the ball, like nobody's open, right? So that's where we get in some issues, and that's what I worry about. If Day is patient enough and just runs the ball, then it's going to be a little bit harder for Michigan, because if they're efficient running the ball, I think then Minter eventually is going to have to start adding somebody into the box, and then you worry about Harrison Jr. or Buka over the top, and then that's where we give up big plays. So if Michigan can stop the run relatively well with 6 in the box, or time their run blitzes really well, maybe they add somebody down, Minter's really good, then I think they'll win the game. If not, then it's going to be interesting. So
I think essentially the winner of this game signs himself in at least the 2 spot in the college football playoff.
Yep.
So
a possible 1 spot, I'll be honest. Like,
Yeah, again, if Alabama does beat
Alabama beats
Georgia.
Georgia. Yeah, definitely the one if Alabama beats Georgia. Michigan can be. I'm telling you right now, like at Georgia, I know is like seems like they're leveling up. It seems like they're getting better and better every week, which they kind of are, right? But
I think I'm seeing an improvement with Carson Beck. Yeah.
yeah, Michigan's can still fully healthy, fully weaponized. Jim Harbaugh back on the sideline. I feel really good about Michigan against anybody. Honestly, even against Georgia, I feel like Michigan's got a good chance. But they got to win one more game to get Harbaugh back in the sideline for something that matters, right? And
Mhm.
because we don't want, I don't want the loss and then you
The
know
Rose Bowl.
the Rose Bowl, which the Rose Bowl is cool. Don't get me wrong, it's a really cool event or whatever. But
It
like
just feels like a disappointment with this year, right?
disappointment when you have this team. This team is really good, right? A lot of these guys
Mhm.
came back to get another shot at the playoff, and I don't feel like a one loss Michigan right now is going to get in the playoff. A one loss to Ohio State, unfortunately. There'd have to a lot would have to go right after that in
I
order
mean,
for
Washington would have to lose, right? And then maybe Florida
Washington would have to
State.
lose. Florida State would probably have to lose as well. Maybe not with Jordan Travis out now. I don't know, but
Um, yeah, Mike Sanders still had some interesting quotes to it. Listening to a press conference with him, and he's obviously excited. He says it's a playoff matchup. It's everything we've been working for: the hours of film study, the training, everything they've been doing. The reason people come back. This is exactly what's going to go into this one. He says Kyle McCord is a guy who's going to sit in there. He's going to read the coverage and he's going to take whatever you give him. So on the being on the defensive side of the ball, he's excited to play him because he knows he's going to try throwing to his best guys. So cover the best guys. And I know that seems simple, but like, yeah, you have to be on Marvin Harrison Jr. You got probably have to have Will Johnson play his best game against Marvin Harrison, and then you have to have Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka covered pretty well too. So it's going to be a battle, but if you're able to stop TreVeyon Henderson, and they still have Mayan Williams too, or
Williams is out for the year.
Dallin Hayden. They have Dallin Hayden.
He's played a little bit lately, but it's basically been TreVeyon Henderson and Chip Trayanum.
Oh, Chip Trayanum too, yeah. So yeah, I mean, if Junior Colson has the game of his life too, when they're able to play with like two linebackers, Michael Barrett, that stuff's going to come in handy. Maybe even Ernest Hausman comes in there. I was really excited to see some Jimmy Rolder this year. He's played very little, and it's like, man,
the redshirt.
He's gonna look good next year. I'm feeling really good about him. He like reminds me of the old school Joe Bolden. Remember old Joe Bolden? That's kind of what
I do. I do. He was okay.
I mean, I think Jimmy Rolder has got a ceiling way better than Bolden, but
certainly, definitely.
So it's gonna be an interesting game. But yeah, what are your score predictions on how this one matches out?
I don't know. This is a hard score prediction. Michigan 34, Ohio State 23.
Right. Well, then I'm feeling a little. I'm picking. I think I'm right now. I'm leaning towards Ohio State, and
towards Michigan. Michigan at home is if this
that
was
is
on
big.
the road, I would feel disgusting about this. But I felt pretty. I don't know how I felt last year. I'd have to look again.
Well, I'm gonna have to dig those up. I mean, I think we both were like, hey, they could win the 2021 one, but we're like, we just haven't seen it happen yet. So until you prove us otherwise, that's kind of where that one. I don't remember last year though very well, but I think I'm gonna just try to go sheerly based on the evidence that we have. Is that Ladarius Henderson may not be 100%. Roman Wilson may not be 100%. JJ McCarthy, if he's really not as healthy as he thinks he is, then that stuff kind of concerns me. So I think from that perspective, and I think the way they kind of play differently this year, yeah, take even the dink and dunk, like taking what you give them instead of just going for the big play as much. I think like that is going to bode better for them actually. So from that perspective, I think I still have a hard time thinking any team can ever put up 30 points against Michigan's defense. Obviously, Maryland really made a push for it, but I think I'm pretty much trying to cap them somewhere around 24, 27 points too. So I think if Ohio State wins 27 and Michigan, I don't think they're going to have Turner go out there and kick 3 field goals. I would say I was initially going to say 27-23, but I'm going to say Ohio State 27 and Michigan 24. So I think it is going to be one of those. And I don't know if it'll come down to a last second field goal. I think just Michigan comes up a little short, kind of like the TCU game. Couldn't quite get all the way down the field in time.
Okay. I can see it. I mean, I think it's going to be a little more of a defensive struggle than it was the last couple of years. I mean, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't love Ryan Day in big games either. I don't think he's a great big game coach. I'll be honest. Like I know he's won a ton of games, but like in all reality, like his talent, the talent level that he has on his teams, he's got one or maybe two big games a year, right? It's not like he's going through a gauntlet in the Big Ten every single game, right?
They definitely gave Georgia a run for the money in the playoffs last year.
They did, right? And I would say that was the best game they played all year by far. And they matched up pretty well with Georgia, right? They have NFL quarterback, like 4 NFL receivers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty good, right? A couple NFL tackles, like they matched up pretty well with them. Just don't know, but they still give up big play after big play after big play on defense. And the key this year is their defense has been kept more stuff in front of them and has tackled better. And their offense is just a little more efficient on the ground. I mean, it's not nearly as explosive, and they force fed Harrison. I mean, they feed him the ball like they find a way to get him like 15, 16 targets no matter what, even if he's covered, right? And it works. So we'll have to see.
Yeah,
A stressful game. I'm gonna be stressed the entire game.
Probably. I might just shave my head so I don't see it. No one sees it falling out actively. All right. Well, then I guess from there we can talk some more positive football in the state of Michigan. The Detroit Lions are 8-2 for like the first time since like the 60s.
Yep.
I mean, for the first time since like Black people can drink out of the same fountain you could have.
Yes.
Is that crazy?
Segregation.
Yeah. So to me, that's what gas is 27 cents a gallon. Like legit.
Yeah, insane.
So going into this game though against the Packers, I'm feeling, even with a short week, obviously for both teams, but it's the injury list for the Packers is the worst I've seen all year.
Like 2 pages long.
They have, let me count, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 players on their injury report.
Yeah.
And pretty key names. Now, granted, almost all but like 4 of them were limited practice.
Yeah, so they'll probably play.
Yeah, so Aaron Jones was still DNP. Dontavian Wicks was DNP.
Yeah.
Josiah DeGuara was. Devondre Campbell was, and then today he was full practice again. So he's probably going to play. AJ Dillon will also be a questionable game time decision. Rudy Ford is questionable. Jair Alexander is questionable with limited practice all week with a shoulder. And then when you get the Lions, and it's like the only person that's out is Jonah Jackson. So again, that's going to mean probably
that's been a thing for a minute.
Sorsdal.
That's been a thing for a while. Sorsdal's been playing, and he's been playing pretty well.
Yeah, and then right now Isaiah Buggs has an illness, so he's still not sure. Melifonwu with a hand, he's probably there, but he may be actually a healthy scratch or unhealthy scratch. And then Ragnow with his toe that I think he has every week, every year for the last 3 years. So we're in good shape compared to them on the injury report. They're going to at least be, at the very least, if those guys play, they're still banged up. Yeah. Right.
And everybody's a little banged up at this time. Don't get me wrong, but
the Lions have stayed impressively healthy.
They have. They've had some misses, some big
early in the year. Yeah.
Early in the year, it was like, oh man, but they've stayed healthy. I mean, the Lions are just a better team than the Packers, so I'm not that concerned about this game. I'll be honest. I wasn't concerned about the Bears game either. And that got hairy for a minute, but hey, they won, so it doesn't really matter. It was concerning for a second. The Lions just struggle with Justin Fields, right? They just do. It's just the way they play defense, right? They struggle with those guys. But they did adjust pretty well in the fourth quarter, can make some things happen there. And the Bears just were the Bears at the end. So, you know, I'm not stressed about this game that much. The Lions played such a good brand of football that, unless they just completely throw the game away with like Goff throwing he threw 3 picks last, but
Off his back foot.
just like with just complete, just utter horrendous, either just completely out of character defense, right? Which has happened once, right? Or they're just completely out talented, which I don't think there's probably only 4 teams in the NFL, in my opinion, that can just completely out talent them, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool to see, because that hasn't been a thing in a while, right? I mean, Dan Campbell, he's had that interview where he was crying about it 2 years ago, right? About the grinders on that team. And that team, comparing that team to this team, that team was not good. Was not talented at all.
They're grinders.
But they were grinders, right? There's still some guys on this team that were still on that team, right? But like that team was just like piecing that thing together with glue and sticks.
Just grit and glue and sticks, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that team was not good, right? Now you have a team that's I mean, Campbell even said it. He's like, we have horses now. We have guys that we can go to. Like Jameson Williams is like wide receiver number 4 on this team, and he's a freaking weapon, right? I mean, I know like we all say some things about Jameson Williams. I'm a pro Jameson Williams guy. I'm not going to call you a hater. You'd love him to be really good, but you've been pounding the JMO bust thing for a while. But like he's a weapon, right? And he's wide receiver number 4 on this team, right? Like, and he's fine with it. You hear his interview. I don't know if you saw his interview. He was just like, they were like, would you like some more targets or whatever? And he's just like, nah, I'm cool. Like we're just gonna keep winning. Like I'm cool with just winning.
So that is one thing that I can at least revoke my statement. I mean, I can't revoke it. It's been said. I thought he was not a good culture fit. And he's proving me wrong, at least in that aspect.
Yeah.
Because you see how selfless he is in the blocking game. He will put his body out there on the line, get in people's way. And he's more than willing to block. He's more than willing to help. And he actually is starting to smile more on this team. Like at first he's down, like he never smiled either. It was just like this. He gave off this thug vibe. I don't like using that word. It's kind of like connotations behind it, but like he's proving that like he seems like he's bought in too. He's like just within this culture now where he's gonna do what it takes to win games, even if he's playing. Whether it's 25% of the offensive snaps or 65% of the offensive snaps, he's been more than willing to do what's needed. And I think we're starting to see him grow. And I have seen incremental steps in the last couple of weeks where it's like he's running more pure routes. Now, granted, he still has ran pure routes and has dropped the ball. So that still has to improve. But I am at least starting to feel like I'm happy. Like it's a situation where it's like, I'm not a hater because I want to be able to eat my words. I want him to be good. Because we gave up draft capital to get him in. We took him at 12. Like your expectations are that much higher. So it's not to no fault of his own. People get help where they're taken, but you have an expectation to live to.
Yep.
And so from that perspective, that's what I'll say on Jay.
I will say this: he was certainly a gamble. And has it fully paid off yet? No. Has it blown up in their face though? No. Obviously he was out pretty much the entire
they haven't lost games because of his drops, thankfully. That's for sure.
Correct. And
like Ebron, they lost games because he dropped.
The injury, right? The injury thing, that was the real gamble at the beginning, right? Because it's like crap. Like we're not
going to get the suspension
last year. The suspension was just stupid. I mean, done by him, but also the whole thing is stupid. Like in all reality, like when the specifics of the suspension are just ridiculous. Like you got to be kidding. Like, and then the NFL.
Well, that's why they got it reduced. He did get it reduced.
Yeah, because it's ridiculous, right? But I do think he helps the team now, which is nice to see. Like touchdown last week was awesome. He is an asset on the team, and I know they picked up DPJ, but I mean that's almost like insurance now.
DPJ is wide receiver 5 right now, so
right.
That's the reason Antoine Green was a healthy scratch last week. And I think Antoine Green is going to continue to be a healthy scratch. But
I'd put DPJ out there. I'd try to give him some targets here and there.
He played 3 or 4 offensive snaps last week.
Yeah.
So it wasn't crazy.
He's still kind of catch up on the playbook too. So
yeah. The reason this game I think looks positive not only because it's a home game and because the Lions are significantly better record. I think they're 4 games out of the Packers right now. Is their pass offense is 7th in the league. Packers pass defense is 24th in the league. And then, you know, you get situations where it's like, okay, then you go to the run offense. Lions have the 4th best run offense in the league with Gibbs and Monty. And the Packers run defense is 20th. So the Packers defense in general has been somewhere around that 20 mark all year. And the Lions have a top 7 offense. So it's like, I'm feeling pretty good. The player I think to watch here is Sam Laporta. He's coming off a rough game, but he's been a key part of the Lions passing attack. And with how well the Packers have played against tight ends this year, I mean, I'm looking at least at the fantasy app. I think Laporta's going to eat. So maybe even the Turkey Bowl MVP kind of deal where he gets a bite of the turducken.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised at all. I think, I don't know. I love the way the Lions running attack is right now too. I think they've kind of Gibbs rounded into form, right? And he's an all-around back now, right? It took him 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get there, right? And I think honestly, Montgomery getting hurt was a blessing for this team overall, like from a big picture standpoint, because it made Gibbs become a better running back overall instead of just being more of a gadget guy or receiver or whatever. And honestly, he's probably the better back right now overall. Montgomery is really good in his role, right? But Gibbs overall is just, I mean, he's an all-around back. He's been crazy. Like
Gibbs has been sweet. He's fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, even if his season ended right now, I'd be like, all right, that was worth the pick. Like,
oh yeah, maybe.
I mean, if you had told me his stats would have been, if his stats were what they are right now at the end of the year, if you would have told me that was going to be his stats at the beginning of this year, you would say, hey, those are his end of year stats. I'd be like, all right, that was pretty good. That was pretty darn good.
It's like you'll take that, right?
Yeah, especially if it was like
because you already knew you had Monty.
Yep. Yeah. If he was running back 1 the whole year, like it'd be a little different, right? But if you're like looking at it and you're going, okay, he's running back 2, yeah, I'll take that.
He's 10th right now in half-point PPR fantasy for running backs.
Yeah. His last 4 games in half-point PPR, he's finished as running back 1, running back 2, running back 3, and like running back 1 again or something, which is insane.
Yeah, he's been crazy the last 4. So the other thing that I think is interesting in this game to look at is I think like where the Packers rank in pass offense, where they rank in run offense. I think it's like if I would have picked it, I'm like, they're gonna flip flop. Right now, the Packers run offense is 25th. And at the beginning of the year, when you know that you have AJ Dillon and you have Aaron Jones, and then Jordan Love can run if he needs to, it's like, wow, they're 25th. And then you think, well, they only had Christian Watson and Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs at the beginning of the year.
They can throw the ball.
And they're 14th. So they're the top end here for passing. So that's going to be the most even portion because the Lions pass defense is 12th. The Packers pass offense is 14th.
Yep.
And then you got the Lions run defense is 8th.
Yep.
And the Packers run offense is 25th. So I think that's going to be, I would hope that we can remain stout in that game, especially with a banged up AJ Dillon.
I think some of the Packers struggles have been like the running backs just haven't been healthy at all this year.
I mean, and that could be again the case here. So I'm thinking with this game, I'm trying to like kind of picture the scores in my head. I think the Packers will land 20 points on us, but I think the Lions could be a well-oiled machine in this game, which is being so healthy. You know, obviously hoping that Goff bounces back after a game last week. I think they could score like, I'm leaning towards like 30, 38 to 20 kind of deal.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. What's the line, do you know?
7.5.
It's pretty big in the NFL. He was 9.5 last week against the Bears. I'm gonna go Lions 31. So we'll give them a field goal, 4 touchdowns and a field goal. I think that's fair. Packers 20.
Yeah, same score then, kind of sitting right around 20 points for them.
Yeah. I mean, I
can see
20. I mean, that's fair.
Lions
tend to do some stupid things here and there too, where I'm just like, what are we doing? Like still on defense, it's just like they have like 2 or 3 drives in a row in the middle of the game where you're like, they're just not playing very well. So
Is the 20 come from 2 Anders Carlson field goals, or does it come from the Packers scoring late and having to get 2-point conversions to catch up back up in the game, and so they miss it and it's 20?
5 field goals.
Right, I know.
I could see it. I mean, I could honestly see it the other way, but probably field goals.
Okay, yeah, well, I think if Ben's predictions go the way he said, then it's going to be a really good weekend of football with a Michigan dub and a Lions dub. The Lions going to 9-2. That is, when was the last time that's happened?
There's no reason why the Lions shouldn't be 9-2. I know it's a short week, weird things happen, and it might be a little bit of an ugly game at times, I'll be honest, but this team they're kind of,
they seem dialed in, man.
yeah, they're dialed in.
Especially when you feel like they're struggling last week and they still figure out a way to pull it off.
Right. You got to be feeling great. Or
yeah,
I could also see it where like a little bit of fool's gold there too, right? But I don't think Campbell will have that team feeling that way. I really don't. So
then let's hope for Ben's predictions. I like his predictions better than mine. So we'll chat with you about it maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks, whatever. We'll talk about it. We'll get there.
figure it out. Yeah, for sure.
All right, we'll see you guys.
See ya.